Make me look good, Carly.
Don't you worry about me, Carly-Ann.
I'm sorry, Carly-Ann. Carly-Ann, holy heck. Hair is not good, Carly-Ann. Save me, Carly-Ann. Keep me good, Carly-Ann. Carly-Ann, pick it up here. Make me look good, Carly-Ann. I trust you with my life.
I am Carly-Ann, and I am Meredith's editor. Hello, sweet friends of Meredith. My name is Cawnawyn Moore. I am so excited to be here today to share with you at 9:30 on Sunday this sort of extended look at meeting charts. Some of you may know me, but mostly people probably know me as Carly-Ann. That is my mundane name because I do go by Cawnawyn Moore publicly now. You may not know who I am, but I know who you are, and I've been so blessed to be able to edit Mare's video content for the last couple of years. I started with her in 2019 after I myself booked her for a reading. This is when she had about 5,000 subscribers online that she had already built and amassed herself beautifully. And now I have the absolute pleasure of working with her every week and getting to share her amazing content with all of you. So I was really honored that she asked me to fill in for her this week so she could catch a little bit of a breath. And I'm so excited to bring you today a deeper look into not just any meeting chart, but my meeting chart with her. I have kind of a fun story of how she and I got connected. So I thought it'd be really great to look at that chart together and see what more we can discover and tie it back to her video last week so you guys see an actual sort of real world implication of those techniques that she shared. So we're going to look at that today. Just a little bit about myself. I am also an astrologer. I live near Meredith in Seattle, Washington. I am also an eclectic witch and priestess in the local area. So very much a spiritual focus with the astrology that I do. I bring it to my community rituals as well as I share the monthly forecast on Bonfire Babble podcast. I am also a composer and musician. And this is actually how I met Meredith, was coming to her as a creator very much in need of support, of help. We got connected, and I am also an editor. I've been editing her videos since May of 2019 was the first video I did for her, and she over the years has taught me all about astrology. So she is very much not just a very dear friend, but my mentor and teacher. I owe it all to her, truly. She is who saved me. So I'm sitting here with so much gratitude, so much excitement to share what I have sort of pulled out of this chart in astrology. And then, of course, if you are interested in any of the work I do, I am online as well under Cawnawyn Moore. You can find me across all platforms, and I'd love to connect with you over there. But let's go ahead and dive into this gorgeous natal chart. Of course, you guys know if you don't have a gorgeous natal chart, you can go get one for so cheap and support Meredith's channel over on Shop Soul Navigation. So I am looking right now at our gorgeous meeting chart, and I do truly think this is gorgeous. There's so much packed into here. I should tell you a bit of the story of what happened and how we met. So I, at the time, was running 6 simultaneous YouTube channels. When I say I have a lot of interests, like that's kind of an understatement. I had been running these 6 YouTube channels and was so burnt out, exhausted, creatively just drained. And I'd gone to school for music, gotten my degree, I had just gotten married. I was working a job that I really disliked about a year previously. And so I got out of that job and I was trying to do all of this work, mostly around music, but I was also working in beauty as well as comedy. And one of my characters was an astrologer that I was very sassy and sort of giving roast to signs, but this was circa 2017, 2018. So of course it's very popular now and people are doing it everywhere, and gosh, it's so fun. At the time I was trying to do that and I was just exhausted and truly not seeing any traction and not understanding why isn't this working? Am I even meant to be doing this? Should I just go get a day-to-day job and sort of suck it up? And I kind of went through this mental breakdown, honestly. I turned to somebody that I'd heard about for years. Now we're going to rewind a little further and go all the way back to 2010, okay? So Meredith is giving, of course, readings and doing her practice. She's been around doing this forever and is such a master at her craft. And a friend of mine, a very close friend of ours, his mother was a client of hers, and she took her son, my friend, to get a reading with Meredith. And it was so transformative that he came to me and he was like, I had this reading with this astrologer and psychic, and her name is Meredith, and she was incredible. And in that reading, she kind of talked about our friendship because he and I had just met doing theater together, and he was looking for love and found our friendship together, and she was giving him some advice. We were only 18 at the time. She was giving him some just encouragement and diving diving into his chart and he was just blown away by her. And so he told me about Meredith, and for years, like 9 years, I kept this name Meredith in my head of this incredible psychic who my best friend had went and seen. And so the time came where I was like, I need help. I need outside like wisdom from me, and who could I turn to? And so I looked her up, and of course she was still practicing. She now had 5,000 subscribers on a YouTube channel. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna book a reading because this is all I can do. And all I could afford was like a 30-minute slot. And I was like, when's the soonest I can get in? And it was for 8 a.m. like a couple days later. And so I booked it because I was like, oh yeah, 8 a.m. like that's the soonest I can get in on her calendar. I book it for 30 minutes. A couple days go by. I am really like just trying to meditate and sit with like the shadow of myself and figure out everything going on. And I was so nervous to meet Meredith because I was like, she's psychic. I can't lie to her. Like, not that I would try to lie to her, but like hide anything. I was like, I've got to be really honest and just like come out. And there was a lot of like magic and wonder about this. Call her at 8 a.m. I'm really on time because I don't want to be late. And she answers and she says, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't mean to make this appointment. And I was like, oh, what happened? She had mistakenly canceled a dentist appointment and the slot opened up in her calendar automatically. It wasn't supposed to open up for readings and I had snagged it. And it was just this like little 30-minute window. And so she was like, I need to call you back. Can I call you back in 30 minutes? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so I waited just like this on my couch, waiting for 30 minutes. And 8:30 rolls around, she calls me and we start our reading. And it was sort of a happy accident because it wasn't meant to be a reading time, but she'd gotten herself together and came back to call this like fresh-faced young client who was confused and just excited to meet her. And I told her, how I had heard about her, and it was like wild that 9 years later, I was actually calling her in a time of need. And then we had just the most incredible reading together. And it changed my life, truly. So when I say getting a reading with Meredith can alter your life, like she saved me that day. And I mean that entirely. And I am not going to get emotional right now. In my time of need, I went to her and she saw me in ways that I'd never been seen before, validated before. I had this like core belief that I'm supposed to make music and art, and I didn't even have to tell her. She saw it. She saw it in my chart, and it was so magical. We wrapped up this meeting, and I told her like, yeah, I'm trying to run all these YouTube channels. And she goes, oh, you do YouTube? Do you know how to edit? And I said, yeah, I know how to edit. And she's like, let's make another meeting and we'll talk about editing. And I think it was like a week or so later, we talked about editing. I edited like a first video of her and she loved it. So you can go back into her amazingly large catalog that we've built together and that she's like created and scripted and tirelessly every week shown up for everybody. And you can go back and see like the beginnings of our relationship together when I started editing for her. And it's just been the greatest joy to be on Team Soul Navigation. I've learned so much from her. That's the story of what happened. So I have cast this chart for 8:30 a.m. because that was when she called me back, and that was kind of our proper hello. We had a very like brief moment, or 8 in the morning when we made the call, but she called me back and it was our like actual, okay, this is our introduction, hello. So as you can see, we have Mars in the first house, right? Immediately telling us what a busy, kind of chaotic time this was. Like it was just kind of go into this. The sun is actually up here in the 12th house. So of course in her last video, she mentioned if you're going to plan to meet somebody, try to make it so the sun is not buried here. But in a way, the appointment was kind of buried in her calendar because she didn't even realize I was going to call her. And so surprise, like here I am kind of coming from the unknown 12th house, right? The sun is very, closely conjunct Chiron here. And I can't tell you how chironic this call was for me in terms of the healing, but I was truly coming to her like in a moment of dire need. I was, when I say mental breakdown, I am not exaggerating. I was very much coming with wanting to find a reason to continue living, let alone creating. And so I'm coming to her as this Chiron moon. What's really interesting is this sun is trining my sun conjunct Chiron in my own chart in Leo. Of course, if you guys don't know about Chiron, please go watch her Chiron series that she did. So incredibly moving and powerful. When she did that series, I was behind the camera like editing and really just like bonding with her in those moments because that was a very healing series for me personally. So I definitely recommend you go check it out because those are some really great videos on Chiron. She's really helped me understand my own relationship to Chiron and my sun in Leo, right? Which is around wound around creativity, right? And self-expression, which is definitely something she spoke to so beautifully in this meeting. So anyway, kind of interesting that we already have that showing up. One of the things that really struck me about this chart is if we look at our nodes here, of course, Meredith and I are both evolutionary astrologers. We work with the nodes of the moon. We work with the nodes in correspondence to past and future lifetimes. And of course, you can go watch all of her fantastic episodes about the nodes, as well as she has a wonderful class on the nodes. So definitely recommend you go check that out. So here are the nodes, right? And actually the South Node was conjunct Pluto at that 22-degree Capricorn. Big degree back in 2020, but this is almost a year previous, March 28th of 2019, right? We have Pluto conjunct the South Node, and look at right here, this is our teeny tiny little 10th house. But this line right here is the angle, is the midheaven. So we have not just the South Node, but Pluto sitting on this midheaven here, which is crazy. And then we have down here, the North Node is on the IC. And it's funny, I look at that North Node in Cancer too, on the IC. And the IC to me is such a private place, and really speaks to the core of who we are and sort of unpacking that spiritual karma that we're taking in from past lives. And that North Node really speaking to stepping into the discomfort of having to grow toward that North Node and nurture, Cancer, North Node, nurture the self in a very private way. And so this reading, while it was just between her and I, spoke magnitudes and volumes for my life, like validating, nurturing, caring for that place that I was trying to step into. What's interesting about this too is it's actually kind of a nodal reversal for me because I have my North Node in Capricorn, South Node in Cancer. So really being able to sort of see that reflection. And I actually have my South Node conjunct my IC. I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys, but I get so excited reading charts. Anyway, so what I think is so fascinating is we have Pluto and the nodes talking to our angles, right? And of course the midheaven, if we talk about meeting somebody who is helping us step into that like greater sense of self, that higher self, that is that midheaven line, absolutely. And we have somebody bringing their gifts, their South Node, their lessons and their wisdom, combined with Pluto's transformational, right, like change, power, coming into this midheaven and being able to connect with an individual on that basis. Like it really spoke to me because like there's true power and death and rebirth here, speaking to that midheaven where we're headed. And not only, of course, did me meeting Meredith have a profound effect, but I think she would probably say, may I humbly say, that meeting me was also a big effect for her because now suddenly she had an editor. And also, fun fact, I had only just met her in March. This was March, and she got married to Joe just months later and gave me the absolute honor of singing at her wedding. So, and not just singing, I ended up arranging the piece that I sang for her to walk down the aisle. So I still can't believe that even happened, that she was willing to let me, come into her world like that so personally and deeply and sing for her, which was such a great honor. So yeah, I think it's safe to say we transformed each other's lives. Let's keep going into this because there's just so much to unpack here. So if we're thinking about like meeting charts, right? So maybe this isn't the best place to aim for, but I do think this chart speaks to the magic of meeting, why it is so important to remember when you met somebody, to write it down or remember it or put it in your phone or something, or look up the chart and cast it for the moment that you meet someone where you're like, this is really important. And I could tell when I met Meredith, it was like, this is gonna change the game, whether I speak to her after this or not. And of course, we all know what happened. It's so important to document these times and to cast the chart and to look at them and see what the connections are. So if we're making some connections, right? We already have this huge nodal axis on the angles with Pluto. We know that this is going to be a deeply healing moment with Chiron talking so deeply to the sun. And of course, in correspondence to my own chart, speaking directly to my sun in Leo with that Chiron. If we look at some other cool things in this chart, first of all, we have just an utterly packed ninth house, right? And if we think about ninth house, this is like the house of, I consider this the house of expansion. Both of us expanding our worlds here, but really for me, coming in and meeting somebody to truly expand my well of knowledge. I've learned so much astrology, and not just astrology, but how that impacts my entire life from Meredith, and her bringing her masterful expertise, her learning, right? Her wisdom from all of her extended education, all of these being ninth house themes. This is the house of teachers, of mentors, of gurus, of spiritual leaders, and even like government leaders, people that work in the realms of law and justice and what we believe to be right and wrong and morality. This is kind of Jupiter's playground, truly. It's why travel comes into here. And of course, she has such incredible stories from all of her travels all around the world. This ninth house is just utterly packed with transformative, deep energy. Again, Saturn being highlighted, right? We have Saturn being sort of that culmination of so much endurance and hard work and grit and overcoming obstacles. And that's what's coming in here to share that knowledge, share that wisdom. And the moon is even coming into a conjunction with Saturn. I know I go really fast through these. So for any of you beginners out there, just try to hang with me and glean what you can, rewind and rewatch if possible. But I want to just talk to all of the different aspects of this chart because there's lots to unpack here. And so hopefully you can see in retrospect, reading a chart, how some of these aspects might play into, wow, I just met someone really key and important in my life. And we'll do a wrap up at the end just so you guys have some key points to take away. So we have the moon coming into this conjunction with Saturn, bringing that heart-filled energy into Saturn's like mastery and wisdom, and again, overcoming of the obstacles, the hard work it takes, all in this ninth house of expansion, really coming together in this relationship of nurturing through those themes. And then over here in this 11th house, this is the house of community, of hopes and dreams and wishes. And let me tell you, walking away from the conversation I had with her, my hopes and dreams and wishes had new fire underneath them, new light, new hope, and truly a connectedness with like the deeper sense of meaning in my lifetime. One of the things she said to me that I loved, I have a lot of Gemini and a lot of Pisces in my chart. And she said that your chart is really trying to take the entirety of the universe and organize it into a sock drawer. It's like, that's exactly the problem, because those two energies together are kind of competing for the control here. And so, but we have all of this Piscean energy filling up this 11th house, really expanding those hopes and dreams and wishes to be something more Piscean, connected with all things, the universe, right? Spiritual understanding with angels, as Meredith says. And all of this, like Venus in Pisces in her exaltation is so beautiful. We have Mercury conjunct Neptune. So speaking to those Neptunian themes of like unconditional love, of the power of music and magic together, and in 16 degrees of Pisces in that 11th house. So some fun facts I want to sort of throw your way, right? If we were to take a look at this chart with my chart, because that's the next step, right? You take a look at the chart and go, okay, like what's really speaking to me here? And there's still more that we can uncover. What's really speaking to me here? What are some key things I'm seeing? And just seeing like, these sort of clumps of planets together in which houses they're lighting up, right? The 9th house of expansion, the 8th house of going really into transformational depth, death and rebirth. Like if we talk about this Jupiter for a second, right? Jupiter being in the house of really deep transformation, but then it's in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is that far-seeking, like exploring mind of expansion. Jupiter is at home in Sagittarius. It can really roam free and grow and learn, right? And gain further wisdom and knowledge and experience. So Jupiter is doing this in a really intimate way, in a very close way, sort of expanding the mind to really understand, like, what is the pain for? What is the depth and the death for? What can be reborn in this like light of a spiritual teacher, which of course is what Meredith was bringing to this. And so like that spoke to me huge. This 8th house is being lit up, the 9th house of expansion being lit up, the 11th house of hopes, dreams, and wishes being lit up. And then even this 12th house, right, being really connected to all things that are beyond us, to the unknown, to spiritual understanding, kind of echoing some of these Jupiter themes. And these are even like, we have Jupiter in Sagittarius, the Sun and Chiron in Aries, right? There's some fire, some passion being like put into these deep wells of understanding within just this chart alone. Which, by the way, she also just did a Jupiter series you guys can check out. And very soon, I am currently working on it, I assure you, we will have have the Jupiter talk that she did, the workshop from Spain, available for you guys to purchase as well. So lots of Jupiter content if you're interested in diving more into Jupiter. All of these houses are being lit up. Let's talk about some synastry now. So first, let's talk about the ascendant, of course, because that's what's on the surface. And my ascendant is actually conjunct. I have ascendant in Pisces. It's conjunct this Neptune and Mercury. They're technically in my 12th house. She and I both work in Placidus, right? And so our houses are kind of a little bit more nuanced. This Neptune Mercury sitting on my ascendant, speaking to who I am appearing to be, how am I showing up. She really was able to like pull from just looking at my natal chart, like the depth of where I try to approach writing my music from and composition. A lot of my work is very spiritually driven. It's also driven by the realms of fantasy and otherworldliness. You know, for a while I was even doing ghost hunting, right? So, and she could like see that. She could pull that from there. So that Mercury and Neptune together, speaking about things that are unseen, about things that are felt and heard, but not necessarily tangible. That's Mercury conjunct Neptune. And she could just pull that out of my ascendant, right? Because I was sitting right there on how I was showing up in the conversation. Of course, we talked a little bit about the Sun and Chiron, talking to my Sun Chiron already. If we look over here to Jupiter, this is actually sitting on my midheaven, which, crazy, right? So again, we talked about a little bit earlier that midheaven and like how important that angle is. Meredith even has a video on the angles and on different aspects, right, around the making of the natal chart. So go check that out if you want more of her interpretation of what the angles mean in the chart, because they're huge. I mean, the ascendant's huge. She has a whole rising sign series, of course, that you can go look up your rising, or perhaps even the rising of a chart that you're pulling for a meeting, right? What is the initial bringing that in, which we'll talk about in a second. This midheaven line, my midheaven, was being lit up by this Jupiter because it was sitting right on top of it. It's like, it's so close. It's crazy. Now, we briefly spoke about Mars earlier. So Mars is actually sitting on my Mars, okay? My Mars is in Gemini, but it's at 0 degrees. So we're within 2 degrees of that. I'm having a Mars return when this is happening, which really, when she gave me this reading, she gave me sort of a challenge that I walked away with, which I'm going to bring up in a moment because that's a fun story too. But she gave me this challenge, and right after this, it's like I felt the fires of Mars like lit up inside of me. And I went from being so upset and sad and like lonely and lost to being like, okay, here's my next challenge. Here's my mission. Very Martian. And so I'm having a Mars return when this is happening, and it's just 2 degrees away from my natal Mars in Gemini. And then this ascendant here being in Taurus, okay? So Taurus, like on the surface, this is just an exchange of goods in a way. Like I'm handing her, I paid her for the reading. She's coming in saying this is a normal, I mean, not so normal. We've got Mars, and Uranus even is kind of close to, it's at least sharing signs with that. It's a surprise, here we are, you know, you're getting paid for this reading and now I'll show up. Like, and so she's in there doing an exchange run by this beautiful Venus, right? Because Venus is our ruler of Taurus up in the 11th house. So like, what's the transaction happening? Is this speaking to this Piscean place of unconditional love and of magic and beauty and spirituality and music, right? In the sense of, we're doing this transaction, we're doing a reading together. Let's talk about your hopes, dreams, wishes, right? And then of course, what came from this, right, is a partnership, a true business partnership where there was an exchange of services. So I've been editing for her for years, and she taught me so much about astrology. This grew to be not just this, again, transaction of goods, of money, which is something that Taurus rules, but truly this like collaboration, this partnership in confidence and self-worth and guidance and love. First and foremost, I think love. And I think like there's a recognition here of what we're bringing to the table. Even in some cases, Venus and Pisces, in goods that are not actually physically tangible. Although Meredith has been very good to me. Let me put that out there. She's been very, very good to me over all these years. Thanks to her, and thanks to all of you for watching her. This is actually sitting on Meredith's North Node. So that should say a lot right there. But for any of you who are still learning, right, we talked a little bit earlier about this North Node energy, what it's pulling us to in the next lifetime. But Meredith's North Node is being lit up by this ascendant. So it's like, here you go, open door. What are you growing into? And sure enough, she just met her editor in this conversation. And she and I have worked hard to bring you guys these videos every Sunday. Her especially so, my goodness. She's sitting, I'm so proud of her, at over 100,000 subscribers. So thank you to all of you. Also, thank you to all of her members joining us on this channel to support her work at Soul Navigation. If you haven't considered becoming a member, please do so. It's a great way to support the channel, and you get Meredith uncut in those. So you get her real and raw Meredith in those videos. She puts those out when she can and does just a great job of really going a lot deeper with these all these different learnings and concepts. So you get a really nice view of sort of more her intimate story. So if you're interested in learning more about her and her practice and how she implements her astrology, that's in there too. She's got a lot of great perks coming for you guys in the new year with more classes and more workshops and all these things. So please do consider becoming a member and supporting the channel if you can. So now I want to talk about this Uranus for a second. This is a really interesting one. So for a little bit of the backstory, right? So Uranus, where it's sitting right here at 1 degrees of Taurus. At the time, a lot of this reading that we had together, I'm just giving you the inside scoop on what she told me. Uranus was just about to move into my second house. Now, what is the second house? Of course, Meredith's got a great video on this. Also, one with Connie Jo is hopefully coming up soon. I want to hear their take on this, but she does have a whole playlist of all about the houses. I look at the second house really as the house of things that we value, things that are of worth to us, including our own self-esteem and self-confidence. But this is truly like where our money is and where our resources are, our things that we find valuable, so like our possessions, right? This is a very Venetian house in the tangible. So the things that we are attracted to, the things that we want to collect, that we want to earn for, to purchase, to buy, right? And then ultimately, how does that reflected in our own self-confidence and self-worth? So Uranus sitting at 1 degrees of Taurus is just about to move into my second house. And what she told me was, okay, you want to take the whole universe and organize it into a sock drawer, right? You got to take the Pisces and organize it into the Gemini. So the goal was, the thing I walked away from that meeting with was, you have to do something to send a message to the universe. What is it, Uranus? What is it I want to bring to my second house? What is it that I would like to work for, to earn, that I value, right? That can bring money into my life. Well, I think the obvious answer was I started working for Meredith, right? That helped a lot. But one of the things at the time that I was like really wanting to pursue and are currently pursuing is my music, of course. And so what can we do to tame this Piscean beast of no boundaries and get the Pisces to like work in a creative manner that will allow you, me at the time, the client, right, to bring in this worth, this value, this money? You know, in sort of this like new way, right? Uranus coming in there saying like, okay, let's break out. Let's do something brand new. She told me like, what's a project that you can just do right now, start to finish and actually put it out there. Like get that Gemini to get all the details together and put it out into the world and share it. And so at the time I had a song that I had written for college, actually for my final like senior project. And I was like, I could turn that into a single and go through the whole process and learn start to finish how to produce and publish a song. And so that's what I did. That meeting is what led to me releasing my first ever single. That single, I think, is probably what contributed to Meredith wanting to ask me to sing at her wedding, which was, again, a huge honor. And now has, of course, led to our partnership. But Uranus coming into that second house saying, what do I want to build? What do I want to earn and create? How do we take all this Pisces music energy brain and turn it into something real and something tangible? So that Uranus was a big deal for me for this. And what's kind of cool about Uranus in this, right? It went into my second house, but of course this is also sitting near her midheaven, bringing in more for her, right? In that stepping into that highest self energy, that's the midheaven, right? Like what is that thing? What is that hope, that dream, that wish that we want to be known for, create a legacy for? And Uranus was sitting there about to shake up her whole world as well. And of course, after this point, her channel just has so grown and expanded. Uranus has been moving through Taurus now for the last several years. It's about to move into Gemini. Are you ready? That's next year, folks. Hopefully she'll do a video about that. Let me know in the comments, by the way, what do we want Meredith to do more videos about? Because I have some sway, so please put it in the comments below. we can convince her. But yeah, Uranus moving into Gemini. It's been in Taurus since this point, since 2019. So what has changed for you, actually? Like, I'd love to know. And please share with Meredith and with me, like, what has changed for you with Uranus moving through Taurus? And where is that in your chart? Because that's another big question to ask yourself. And as it moves into Gemini, what are you foreseeing maybe Uranus shaking up a little bit for you in that placement in your chart? So I'm going to take us just backwards through this chart a little bit more. So we already talked about the sun and Chiron, right? And that's been talking to my sun and Chiron in this moment. So look for those things. Like look where the sun is talking to your sun in these charts. Is it in a flowing trine relationship, right? Was the conversation easy? Was it healing in that way? Or maybe it was in square relationship to your sun. How is it like impacting you and motivating you, or maybe aggravating you or irritating you toward having to take some sort of action being related to the square? Is the sun in sextile to your own natal sun? So was there a collaborative nature here? Were you guys putting in input and ideas together? Were you growing something out of that? Maybe it was standing in opposition to your sun. So there could be, in some cases, right, that oppositional energy is very magnetic and like, ooh, like I see that you're bringing something that I don't have, and how are we working together? There can be kind of a spicy, again, magnetism there, but then also that can be really met with an opposition, with a challenge. So maybe it's somebody who was not willing at all to work with you. Maybe there had to be some sort of a compromise or a loss in that conversation. So you can look to just the sun's relationship to your own sun in a meeting chart and see a little bit about how that went. The same can be applied for the ascendant. I think in the last video, Meredith talked about how she'll cast a chart for readings that she does to see how the reading's going to go. And the ascendant is a great place to start with looking at any meeting chart, because this is what's on the surface, right? We talked about how this was a transactional, I paid for the reading, she's giving me the reading, and there's an exchange of goods there. And so on the surface, it looked very Taurus, right? With Mars on the ascendant, making it a little, crazy, here we go, like jump right into action. And so that was kind of an indicator of like, get to work, Meredith. Like, you got a client, here she is, she's ready to go. That's what's going on the surface. And then of course, as we dive deeper, just even looking at who the ruler of this Taurus ascendant is, there it is, that Venus, right? Talking to what the depth of the conversation was really about. So just looking at this alone, those three aspects, the sun, the rising sign, and the ruler of the rising sign, can really give you a scope of how this is going to go, how that meeting went for you. And hopefully you can gain some insight from it, because that might allow you to see into the other person's perspective as well. And the sun and Chiron for her, what's interesting is this was in her 9th house. Again, bringing in that element of sharing her wisdom, sharing her knowledge, expanding both of our horizons, because this meeting led to her own career expanding into YouTube quite prominently. Now, something interesting about this collection over here of planets, right, and positions, the South Node, Pluto, Saturn, and the Moon, these are all sitting in her 6th house. So this meeting was like just another day at work, right? The 6th house is our house of the sort of mundane, the tasks that we do every day. This is also the house of pets and of our health routines, right? Go please check out Connie Jo and Meredith's video on the 6th house. Is fabulous. Totally recommend listening to it, especially if you've got lots of 6th house placements, which I do. All of this is happening in her 6th house. This is, again, transactional. This is her day-to-day. She didn't go to the dentist. She talked to me instead, right? Like just another day at work. But this moon here, I'll tell you, is actually sitting on my Uranus. So we have the moon kind of lighting up the heart of the chart, really lighting up that Uranian energy for me, that burst, that insight, that, oh yeah, I have this idea. I could turn this into something. Very Capricorn as well. Like, let's take Uranian inspiration and make it very practical. Turn it into some form of an ambition, right? And so the moon speaking to sort of caring and nurturing for that idea. How can we take this and work with it? And then we talked a little bit about this Jupiter sitting on my midheaven, being here in that depthful, like 8th house, that place of transformation, of going, into the darkness, frankly. This is such an intimate house, truly expanding my own awareness of my spirituality. I remember we were talking during our meeting. I let her do most of the talking because I just wanted to soak in every word she said. But one of the things I'd mentioned that she was so validating is I was really starting to have very psychic experiences. And I shared with her what that was like. And she was like, yeah, it really sounds like you are. And I had never had anyone tell me like, yes, what you are in fact experiencing is real. There's communication with the other side here. She was truly expanding my own awareness around 8th house concepts. But what's really cool about this Jupiter also is this Jupiter is sitting on her Venus, which I just think is lovely. Of course, in a practical sense, right? The Jupiter brought an expansion once again to Venetian themes around money, around worth. But really, her love that like that Jupiter just expanded her heart for me in such a way that just like wrapped me in love, in Venetian acceptance, and not just acceptance, but like Venus and Jupiter together in Sagittarius. This is somebody with big dreams, big ideas, and I think you guys can all agree that Meredith is that. She is so, let's take your beautiful dream and expand it and make, you know, you feel empowered and let you go toward the things that your heart's calling you to do, because you know what, the chart is probably saying you're meant to do those things, and that's really what the lesson she brought to me was. So I dearly hope that this was helpful to you and that you gained some insight into how looking at meeting charts, right, in retrospect can really bring up so much awareness around what that meeting was for you. So if you feel at a time that like this was a big deal, or even just inspired, or you feeling more powerful after meeting somebody, take note of the time and go back and look at the chart and look at it in synastry with your own chart, with that other person's chart if you have their birth data, right? You can of course buy any of these buy wheels, look at the synastry between you and a meeting chart or you and another person, shop Soul Navigation. So please be sure to go purchase that if you need access to those things. She's just got a wealth of resources that you can use. You know, doing the work with the charts in this way is one of the best ways to learn astrology, is to take those moments that really speak to your life and to the development of your life and apply it to your own chart and go like, okay, I know I felt this, right? How is that showing up for me here? Oh, look, there's a conjunction. Let's find out what that means. Oh, look, where is that showing up in my house? Where is that showing up in their house, with moments that speak to you? I find that looking at event charts have honestly taught me, I don't want to say more than looking at clients' charts, because I've had a privilege to work with some really incredible clients out there who just have wonderfully magical lives. And I know that Meredith, as well as Connie Jo, can say the same. So if you guys are looking to have a reading, have never had one before, or maybe haven't had one in a while, please go check out their site. Of course, you can look up both of their bios. I have had a reading recently from Connie Jo myself, and oh my gosh, it was so cool because she was just able to see, I was able to luckily meet her in person at the last Seattle retreat that Meredith did back in May, and got to meet Connie Jo, whom I've edited but never met in person until then. And she was just immediately able to tap into energy with me that like, I didn't even have to say anything. And she's like, do you think that maybe the spirit of like, you know, your grandfather is like, I mean, it was so cool. So if you've never had that, like, please go chat with Connie Jo as well. I highly recommend her work. We were really touching on a lot of the Chiron themes actually in my chart. It was so healing to talk to her. You know, both of them, I so recommend if you haven't already. I didn't mean to make this like a giant sales pitch, but like, I can't help it because I am living proof at the transformational work that Meredith does, that Connie Jo does, and I've been lucky enough to edit them for you guys every Sunday. So please know that I'm coming with so much gratitude for you sharing your space and time and energy with me today looking at this chart, and I hope you're able to gain some fabulous insight going forward.